All right. Hello, students. This is Professor Fadum again. I wanted to make actually new videos talking to you about two topics. So it's going to be two videos that you will watch as preparation for writing the first essay in English 12. And this is actually, specifically for my English 12 ALP class, which you all know about and I've talked to you about before. So the first subject I'm going to talk about today is the content of the essay. So the essay really kind of has two sort of conceptual pieces, right? One is, what are you going to say? Right? What is the essay going to say? What is it going to argue? What is the point of the essay? Why does it exist in order to say what? Okay. Then there is, for college purposes, right? And sometimes for other purposes as well, work purposes, if you're writing an essay, for something at work, or for any other purpose, some kind of publishing you might be doing. But for college purposes, there's definitely also another factor, which is the format. So there are very specific rules in college writing for how do you format your essay on the page. How do you type it, right? How is it typed onto the page? What is it supposed to look like in terms of appearing on the page as a document, which is, obviously very different from if it's a report, right? A report is formatted completely differently, or other kinds of writing are done differently. So an essay for college has a specific, what we call style, which is the format or appearance of the essay. So my second video today is going to deal with that part. So I'm going to talk about that part two. Video part two. Video part one is the content. So the first thing that I want you to think about as I talk now, and as you listen and think about English 12 and think about your college careers and stuff, certainly one of the most important skills that we need, right? Because writing an essay, especially according to college guidelines, it's a skill. It isn't just, the same as like writing emails or something. It's a skill, and it's technical, and it's got stuff that we have to be aware of and think about and stuff. So very important part of your whole college career. You will write so many essays. My students have come back to me after leaving Kingsborough and saying to me, "Professor, why didn't you tell me I was going to write so many essays in senior college? You should have warned me." But so, yeah. So, that writing the college essay and doing it well and getting it right and getting the format right and stuff, it's a very important part of your overall success as a college student, your ability to get to the graduation stage, and get your diploma and move on, and move on and live your life. First question that I want you to think about then, right, is, what is an essay? It's a very basic question, right? And I think a lot of us, someone says you're going to write an essay as your assignment for this class, and we're all like, yeah. As if we know for sure, definitely in our bones, what that means. And I think very often we don't actually. I think we come through high school and we write something like an essay, right, a few times. And maybe we have to write something to pass a Regents, and it's something like an essay. And so, I want to think for a minute before I get into particulars. I want to think for a minute now about what is an essay actually. Because it's not anything. It's not any paragraph. Any collection of paragraphs is not an essay, or any collection of whatever sentences is not an essay. An essay is a very specific type of writing, and it's different from other types of writing. So it's different from stories that are written down too. It's obviously different from poetry. You read the Amanda Gorman poem. You read the little Emily Dickinson poem, right? Those are very different, as you see. Those are not essays, they're poems, and they're very different. So an essay is a particular kind of writing, and there are different kinds of essays. I don't teach this class that way. Some people teach English 12 where they teach you genres of the essay, right? And I don't believe in that. I think what you need from me is a basic understanding of what is the essay. Then you, as you go through your college classes, once you've really got that down and you've got that map in your head, like a geography, right? Then you can apply that geography, that map, to different situations that you encounter. But I don't want you to be worried about what's the difference between an informational essay versus a personal essay versus a storytelling essay versus a argumentative essay. I don't want you to be thinking about those things because they're all essays in the end. And what we need to learn, what we need to know is a sort of core foundation for college success is what is an essay, what is a good essay, right? And then we figure out from class to class how we modify, right? Based on a particular assignment, based on a particular course that we're taking, based on particulars that the professor has given us for this particular essay assignment. But if you've got this core, right, that's what you need. That will sustain you through and across your college career and then into your career, your life, right? So what is an essay and why is it important and why is it so important to college success and why do we think it's so important for college students to really be able to write a good essay and do it many times over in order to get a college degree? Well, because essay writing is really something, it is a genre of writing, but it's also a thinking skill where it's different from writing a diary, which is writing also. It's different from writing a story. It's different from any other kind of writing. Because what we do as essayists is our job as an essayist, always, every time, without exception, our job as an essayist is to persuade, convince, to persuade and to convince. And what that means is that an essay, regardless of what type, regardless of what class, regardless of what the purpose of the essay is, right? An essay is always rhetoric. Okay, in fact, some English departments aren't even called English departments, they're called rhetoric departments, right? Some, and this skill of rhetoric is what's really important for you, well, for me anyway, and for you also, to learn in English 12 or to start to master, right? In English 12 is this ability to have an idea and to convince a readership or an audience. You can write down an essay and then you can give it as a speech. A speech is also an essay, right? It's also rhetoric often. A speech is not always rhetoric. An essay is always rhetoric, okay? There is never a time. And the reason for that is this, that really what an essay is. The word essay, which has now become an English word, it is a word from French. It is the verb to try in French, essayer, right? So this word, a lot of words in English, a lot of words from French, because of history and political history and the long and complicated history between Britain and France and areas that are also other areas that are French speaking, much of the English, much of the French language migrated and became part of English. So there are many, many words in the English language. Those of you who speak French or Creole would know from that many of the words in English are direct cognates in French, right, or in other French dialects. And so that's because of this, history, long, complicated history of in Western Europe. But the idea is that you are trying, right? You are trying to what? Trying to persuade, trying to convince, trying to make a case. And so that's really what an essay is, and it is what an essay always is. Don't let anyone tell you that an essay is not rhetoric. And so what I think is most important is for you to keep that nugget in your head all the time when you write essays for college. What am I doing? I'm having an idea and I'm persuading and convincing my reader about that idea. And so how do I do that? How do I have an idea about something and make the person listening to me talk about my idea? How do I make them also come my way, right? How do I get them to see the sense and the logic or the ethics, the moral value of what it is that I'm trying to say, right? The rightness of what I'm trying to say. So for example, I never will or would, but because everything we do in my classes is based on text, right? You're reading lots of different pieces of text, and that's because, in college, the other thing that we do, trying to prepare you, right, for your futures as college students. And so one of the other things we do all the time, everything we do as college students, is responding to texts, whether that's a textbook chapter that we were assigned to read, or whether that's some other kind of text, journalism, a newspaper article, a blog that was assigned for reading, a novel, right? Whatever it is, we are always responding to text. And so I get you right with that. We don't write personal essays in my classes, at least almost never. That is essays about ourselves, which is fun and a lot easier. I wish we were writing personal essays, but we don't. We're doing, college work, and college work means responding to texts. And often our response to a text is personal, and it can be personal. The way that we respond to a text in an essay, it can absolutely be personal. It doesn't have to be all formal and, it can be your personal response. That's fine with me. But it's not a personal essay in the sense that it's not like, what did I do on summer vacation, right? Something. So the idea is that, let's say, for example, when I say rhetoric, an example of what I mean. If you were to, I could give you an assignment, which, as I said, I won't, but I could, write an essay in which you persuade and convince me of your position on the death penalty. It would be very hard for you to convince me that it's a good thing, but your job, were I to give you that assignment, would be to convince me or to convince a reader. I'm not the god of your essays, right? I'm just your teacher. So to convince a reader, right, about whatever your position is. So are you for the death penalty? Are you against the death penalty? Why? What are your reasons? What is your logic, right? How does it make sense, your idea? Now that's an essay in which it's not text-based. It's just your opinion, as I have said it so far, right? As I've said it so far, there's an issue before us, and the issue is the death penalty. It's a much debated issue in American criminal justice circles. It's debated around the world. And so So the question I've so far given you for this assignment is not a text-based question. It's just, what's your opinion and how do you back it up? Why do you feel that way? Give us your rationale, convince us of your rationale and of your position. Now, I could have given you another assignment where I said, okay, now inform your position on the death penalty, by which I would have meant go out and get research, do research, read a bunch of recent articles, read a bunch of recent op-eds. An op-ed is an opinion piece, right? And so you'll see, well, like we read in Unit 2, right? In Unit 2, we read op-eds by Nicholas Kristof. Okay, so short opinion pieces. Some of them are very, very good. New York Times, Washington Post, London, what is the big newspaper? Times of London, right? They have wonderful, op-eds that are every bit as good as a longer, but anyway, articles in journals, articles in newspapers, op-eds, whatever else, right? Magazine articles, stuff like that. So the idea in that case would be for you to take your opinion, and now you're going to go out and do research, and you're going to learn a whole bunch of stuff about what are experts saying about the death penalty, right? What are the positions on the death penalty that are sort of standard, out there, like in the research on the death penalty. And so you're going to then inform. And sometimes when we do research, our opinion actually changes. We read a bunch of stuff and then we're like, wow, I never thought of that, right? Wow, I didn't realize that was an issue. Wow, I didn't realize that happened when people are put to death, and stuff, which I do know some about, and it can be really horrifying and awful. Anyhow, so the idea is that, there can be just an essay that's just your opinion, right? Still rhetoric, right? It's an essay. Where it's just your opinion on a topic. Or you have a text-based essay, which is one where, yes, it's your opinion, right, about something, but it is your opinion much informed by lots of other people's opinions and lots of other people's research and data and evidence and information, critical information that helps to inform and maybe modify or maybe strengthen or maybe weaken, and change your opinion, right? So this is why in this class, we have started with a bunch of smattering of YouTube videos and this and that, and chapters from Michael Pollan and chapters from, Eating Animals, and chapters and Nicholas Kristof op-eds, and, information about Greta Thunberg, and information about, just different, right, stuff. So, because you're going to use these texts, and you're going to do a first essay, which was what this, sort of mostly what I'm thinking about in making the current video. You're going to write an essay in which you choose, for the first essay, you're going to choose one text as like a major focus where you're analyzing that text. So you're going to analyze, the stuff we've read from Eating Animals, or you're going to analyze the stuff we've read from Michael Pollan's book, In Defense of Food, or you're going to analyze Amanda Gorman's poem, Earthrise. And again, in any of these analyses, you can use other things we've read. You don't have to just use Eating Animals, right? Or just use Michael Pollan, or just quote from the poem. You can use other things. So for example, if you're going to write about Earthrise, which is a poem on climate change by Amanda Gorman, who is a young, brilliant poet, well, you might go to the Greta Thunberg module in Unit 6 and use some stuff there in your discussion of the poem Earthrise. That I think would be a really super connection. If in your paper on Amanda Gorman's poem, you want to bring in something, well, the stuff on Greta Thunberg is a great place to sort of go. There's a little primer on climate change by Bill Nye, which you can use as well. And there's a whole module of material on Greta Thunberg. Greta is a young, I think I've mentioned her in other videos. You learn about her in Unit 6, but she's a young climate change activist. And she's, I want to say, students, she is changing the world. You know, people talk about changing the world, like, you know, well, James Baldwin said, right? That James Baldwin, great African-American gay writer. He was, you know, he's certainly in the top 5 writers in my heart. He said, you write to change the world. That's why you do it, right? And so certainly rhetoric comes into that, right? Because if you want to change the world, you've got to convince people, right, of things, right? And Greta Thunberg has been so brilliant and awesome, you know, in my opinion, as a young woman activist, you know, just, and also she's so great because her commitment to climate change isn't just rhetorical. It isn't just her feelings and thoughts, which she says well and articulately and brilliantly. It is also in her actions and choices and behaviors. You know, when she came to, as you'll see in the video, in the interview with Trevor Noah, that's in the module on Greta, she took some ship. She took, instead of taking a plane, because of all the issues with you know, aerospace and climate change, she took a ship, some liner from Europe to America to attend the UN and to speak at the UN. Her commitment is, you know, real. And that's so important, such an important part of leadership, right, of any kind, and activism of any kind. Anyway, so I also teach about her to motivate, to inspire us, right, to change the world. You can use, sorry, let me get back to where I was. You can use any of that stuff, right? Any of the parts of the module on climate change in your paper on the Amanda Gorman poem if you want. Draw some connections, you know, think about, oh yeah, that's what Amanda Gorman's talking about, or that's what, you know, where does the writing of Amanda come together with the real life work of Greta, you know? I think this is a really interesting paper. Okay, so in this class, we write text-based essays only. We don't write just an opinion essay, a personal opinion essay, and we don't write personal essays about ourselves. We write text-based essays always. So an essay is an attempt to persuade and convince a reader about something, and it's usually something many people would say is important, right? The issues in this class, as you know, as you are learning, are important, right? The issues of climate change are super important. The issues of food safety and food nutrition and food healthfulness and all of these issues that we're learning about, the issues of animal cruelty and animal welfare, right? All of these issues, the food issues related to just culture, right? All very, very important. So now you're learning a lot, and so you're coming to a point in our class where you are going to do your first attempt at, okay, I have something to say about this stuff now. And what is it? So the question for essay 1, due, you know, in the fifth unit of our class is what do you have to say now, right? What are you going to talk about? And you can talk about anything, right? From the whole sort of spectrum of issues that we've read about so far and touched on so far in our readings and Blackboard posts and everything. What's your focus going to be, right? So I would say choose your favorite text, right? Like if you really liked eating animals, even if it's only one of the chapters. It doesn't have to be all the chapters we've read. It can be, but it can also just be one chapter, right? Or if you really liked In Defense of Food, like you really thought it was important and interesting what you were learning about the Western diet and the industrialization of food and what has that meant and what does it mean for us to think now, in what we call like this postmodern, right? Or whatever moment, era, late modern era. What does it mean for us to think now about like returning to, sort of ancient and very, very traditional traditions when it comes to food? Anyhow, right? Maybe that's what you think is really interesting and important. Or maybe you love poetry, you're a poetry person, maybe you write poetry, and you just, or maybe you're a climate change person, and you're really interested in eco issues and you want to think more and deeply about climate change, then maybe your text would be the Amanda Gorman poem, right? But it's okay, but also, remembering that climate change is a big issue in eating animals as well. So it could actually be either. Pollen doesn't really get into climate change so much in Defense of Food. It's more of like a nutrition book, and food health kind of book. But definitely Jonathan Safran Foer does, right? He was one of the things I think he really wanted to get across in Eating Animals was the impacts on the climate, on global warming of food production. And as he says, I gave you another video in one of my announcements. I linked you to another video, a little short interview with him, where he talks about, he stresses to the interviewer that, food production is currently the #1 contributor to climate change. More than the aerospace, right? More than right? More than cars, right? It's quite shocking, to learn that, but it is actually true. And it's all sort of comes back to this, what I consider an evil of our world, factory farming. His next book, by the way, it's called We Are the Weather. That one is about climate change. So that was sort of a follow-up to Eating Animals. And that's about about climate change. I'm sorry, his book, We Are the Weather. Yes, We Are the Weather is the one. He has another one out even since that one. Yeah. So if you're really interested in climate change and you want to go further and do additional research into climate change, get that one. Get the Kindle book, or whatever, or just get that book and read We Are the Weather. And because that'll give you much more. So really, Eating Animals is a book Jonathan wrote, about factory farming and trying to inform us about where our meat comes from. Did we know all that? No, we didn't, right? And trying to get us to really think about, do we want in our personal lives to support that? Right? Do we want in our personal lives to purchase pork chops, chicken wings from factory farms? No, we don't, right? Not most of us. And so, with that information, it's really empowering, right? To read that book and have that information. We can also question it all too, right? We don't have to take it lock, stock, and barrel, even though the book is quite meticulously researched. Like, it's a very clearly, strongly researched rhetorical argument. If you think about it, we're talking about the essay right now. Eating Animals is a long essay in 9 parts, and it's a very well researched, long, book length essay, as I said, in 9 parts. And so it's hard to argue with the science in Eating Animals, but we certainly can, right? And we certainly can do further research and look at more things and listen to other voices and listen to other things and challenge what we are reading, along with learning and hearing what we are reading. So for the first essay, you're going to decide what you want to talk about. What is your primary text? It's either In Defense of Food or Eating Animals or Earthrise by Amanda Gorman. Okay. And then you're going to say to yourself, what did I learn from this text? What do we learn from this text? What's important? Why did I choose this text? Right? Why did I love this one more than the others? Like, what did it say to me that just stuck with me, right? That sort of stuck to me like glue. Or what did it say to me that just hit me and I thought, wow, that's important for me to know. What is it? So I want you to analyze your text. Think about what you read, reread it again if that would be helpful in devising your essay. Go back to your Blackboard posts, read them all, anything you've written on that text. Anywhere you've mentioned it, maybe copy those and paste them into a Word file or a Google Docs file, right? And save them, because there's definitely going to be stuff in your Blackboard post that you've already written that you can use in this essay. So don't forget, you already started writing this essay in those posts. That's the idea. Okay. Think about it. What are you going to say? What are you going to convince your reader of? What is your position? You can either come to this essay, you can gonna come to it in one of two ways. You can come to it as, I have a certain position on an issue, and I'm going to use eating animals as my text informing my position on that issue. Factory farming should be outlawed or should be taken down, taken apart. The government should fund a return to real farming by real entrepreneurial farmer families or farmer persons or farming collectives. There are a lot of farming collectives. Look up, Google it, Soul Fire Farm, amazing place. But like, in other words, you may come with a position already, like, I want to talk about my position on factory farming, or I want to talk about my position on the industrialization of food and how we need to inform people about the ills of it, and we need to return, we need to inspire a return to unprocessed, deindustrialized food, whatever, right? So the other way you might come to this essay is the second way you might just conceptually sort of think about, how you're going to write, what you're going to write, is to say, I have an analysis of this text. And it is my sense that really what Jonathan Safran is saying in what I've read so far from Eating Animals is fill in the blank. Okay, you can do it that way as well. So, and those are two different just sort of mental pathways, right, to an argument. But your analysis of, the text, your position on the text, your argument about the text, it needs to be arguable. It can't just be Eating Animals is a book about factory farming, or Eating Animals is a book about how factory farming is bad. I mean, right? It is. That's not really much of a position, because anyone who reads Eating Animals can make the same statement, right? That's not really an arguable statement. If someone was to say, Eating Animals is not a book about how factory farming is bad, all of us would say, what book did you read? Because it is. Okay. So in other words, that's not really an argument. We have to dig deeper, right? We have to dig deeper into the text and really suss out something that's good and important to us, and that is super specific, or much more specific than saying something very obvious about the text, right? So we might say something like, the real value of Jonathan Safran Foer's book comes not in whatever he says in the book about being a vegetarian or not being a vegetarian. What's really important about the book, and then this is a new sentence, that was a period, new sentence. What's really important about the book, Eating Animals, is that it is a book about raising awareness amongst the general public about the evils and the threats to us, the threats to our health, the threats to the planet, because of factory farming, period. These ills and problems and threats, I'm just doing this off the top of my head, have been kept from us, as we learn, pretty strategically. Therefore, for the most part, most people, most Americans, most people in the world do not know what they are eating when they sit down to eat their dinner. Whether they are having dinner at a place like McDonald's, where you should never, ever eat, ever. Or they are sitting down at home to a plate of food that they lovingly cooked for their family, right? If the meat on the plate has come from a factory farm, that meat is loaded with problems. Conceptual problems, ethical problems, real material problems in terms of what is in that meat, right? In terms of what was done to that animal to get that ginormous size chicken breast, that unnaturally huge chicken breast. Okay? So those several sentences, I don't remember where I started, 7 sentences ago, that's a thesis. Okay? In other words, it's not just, this is a book about how factory farming is bad. Yes, it obviously is. But dig deeper, right? Combine what this book is saying with your own feelings and thoughts and opinions about whatever issue, And I don't just mean eating animals, same thing with In Defense of Food, same thing with Earthrise and climate change. I think political poetry, like Amanda Gorman's poem, is extremely important, in terms, again, of raising awareness. And one of the things Greta Thunberg says in one of her interviews that I give you in the Greta Thunberg module is it's the interview also with Trevor Noah, I think, where she says, he asks her a question and she says, well, in Sweden, we don't encounter the question of whether climate change is real or not. It's just, everyone knows it's real. She said it's only in this country, in the United States, where we encounter this question of, is it real or isn't it real? That's an issue, man. And there's lots of issues connected to that. Why is that, that she experiences that? And just as I said a moment ago about the problems with factory farming being pretty strategically kept from us. Think about it. In Eating Animals, the only way Jonathan Safran Foer was able to get access to the inside of a factory farm after many attempts, many legitimate attempts, writing letters to CEOs, trying again and again and again to get access to a factory farm as part of the research he was doing for a book he was writing. Okay? The only way finally he was able to gain access was to break in at 3 a.m. illegally to a factory farm. Shocking. This is the food we're being sold in the supermarket. This is the food that we're being asked to purchase as part of the US economy, right? There's something wrong with that picture. And when we start to think about climate change, right? When we start to think about that Amanda Gorman's talking about in Earthrise, that Greta has been working on since she was 15, right? That we start to think about these things, we realize that something is wrong with this picture. Okay. And so, that's an issue. As another, add it to the list of issues, that we're dealing with in this class, of spectrum of issues that come under food studies, is this access to information, right? And okay, what is the content of the essay? Let me stop. Let me do this. Okay, so now, when we are writing an essay for college, when we are attempting to, in writing, persuade and convince a reader about our position on something, we need to do a few things. First, we need to introduce the topic. We need to first set the essay up. We can't just dive in to all kinds of details and minutia and stuff, right? We can't just start going off, making our argument in detail. We have to first say to the listener or reader, what is our paper about? What is the general subject matter? Maybe what is the more specific subject matter? What texts, or what major text have we brought to this discussion that we're going to use to make the argument? And what is that text about, or who wrote it, right? When did that text come out? Give some information, right? So first, tell the reader, here's my general subject area, right? Or more specific subject area. Here's my major text I'm going to talk to you about. And here's what I have to say about it, about this subject issue, right? Here's my contribution, my position, my argument, my opinion, my interpretation of the matters at hand, okay? That's your introduction, 3 pieces, right? Take notes, right? Now you're taking notes. What is my major subject area? What am I talking about, right? However you want to frame that. And then what's my text? What text am I using and has informed me a lot about this so far? And whatever text that is, right? Who wrote it? When was it? What's it about? Give some summary, a general sort of summary of the text. Finally, what is your position? For what reason does this essay exist? Because an essay, if it is an essay that, like I said in other places, right? The DNA, the core, the soul of an essay is its thesis, which means, we think in philosophy, right? We think about this idea of thesis, antithesis, right? Or debate, right? We think about this idea of thesis, antithesis, meaning position, counterposition, right? Position, response to the position, right? Stance, counterstance. And so we, in an essay, right, it's like lobbing a ball in tennis, right? You serve the ball, right? That's what you're doing in an essay, is you're saying thesis, right? Here is my position. And so you are now going to say to your reader, here's my contribution to this discussion. Okay, now the next whole big chunk of the essay for paragraphs, in this case, your essay is 3 pages, right? I gave you a sort of limit of 3 pages. You can go over, you can't really be under. Don't be under 3 pages, but you can be over. So if you're over, don't worry. Your essay is 3 pages, okay? Well, when we put the essay in Emily style, which we will, you will, that's about 6 paragraphs. The reason I say that is each paragraph is roughly half a page, maybe, generally. And so 3 pages, each paragraph half a page, you've got about 6 paragraphs. So you know the first one's going to have to be that piece I already explained, that 3-part setup. That's your first paragraph. You don't have to write it first. You can write it at the end. I often do that in my own work, right? I write all my body stuff first, and then I figure out what I'm saying, and then I come back and I write my introduction, right? So you don't have to write it first, but it has to come first, right? Because the reader, because of our human psychology, how we think, how our brains work, right? We need some setup. We can't just jump right into a bunch of information that hasn't been prefaced, because then we get confused and we don't know what goes with what another, right? So first paragraph is that setup, which I mentioned and has 3 parts. Final paragraph is always going to be, again, because of human psychology, final paragraph is always going to be like a summation, right? A summary sort of paragraph where you, now it's almost cold. Anyway, a summary paragraph where you sort of take what you've said, all this compelling evidence and discussion and persuasion that you've just given the reader, and you sort of bring it to a close. People call this the conclusion. Whatever you want to call it is fine. It's just the end of the essay where you end the essay. Okay, so those are 2 of your 6. So that leaves you with roughly 4 paragraphs to make your case. And that's what you want to think about. You don't want to think of, oh, now I have to write a body paragraph. Don't think of it that way. Think of it as, I am making a case for something. I am making, I have an idea. I have an opinion. I have an interpretation. And I am making the case for it. I have 4 paragraphs in which I need to present evidence, right, for my case, and in which I need to persuade and convince, using my evidence, my reader about my case. Okay, so that's the way you want to think of your what we call body paragraphs. Don't just think of them as, oh, right, I learned how to do a body paragraph in high school, and here I'll do one. Don't just forget that, right? Think, I'm making a case. What's my case? Okay, so then if that's the case I'm making, then what is the first thing that comes to mind from when I read Eating Animals, or when I read In Defense, or when I read Earthrise? What is the first thing? What are the most important lines from Earthrise that I need to speak to my reader about in order to begin making my case, in order to use those lines, as evidence for what I'm saying? And so this is why I had said to you in a previous announcement, start finding your quotes, start making note of the quotes you're going to use, make note of the parts of the text that you're going to paraphrase and put into your own words, right? Start making note of all those things. Right? So that's what you're doing in that whole intervening piece, right? Don't think of it as, an assignment. Think of it as something, excuse me, something you are authoring, something you're putting your name to, and which is your opinion and your feeling about something. And so make it good and make it right, make it count. So once again, how are you going to present your evidence, right? Quotes or information, or just logical stance or something like that. Like, how are you going to present your evidence? How are you going to present your support for your case, your thesis? And how are you going to use those details, those quotes, that info, that whatever? How are you going to use it as evidence for your thesis? Okay, so that's what you want to think about. What you need to do for the presentation of each of these items, right? For the presentation of your 4 or 5 or 6 items of evidence in this essay, you want to make sure, first of all, tell the reader, what is the evidence I'm giving you right now? What is the details? What is it? First just tell them, introduce it. Then give it, then give it to them, right? Then give the details, explain, lay it out, give the quote, discuss the quote, or put the quote in pieces and discuss each piece, right? So that you're filling in for them an item of support for your main idea. The third thing and final thing you need to do in each of your evidence paragraphs is tell them, what does it have to do with your main idea? Don't just give the quote and discuss the quote and move on, right? This is what students often do, and it makes your paper much weaker and much less persuasive, because if you do that, if you just say, here's the quote and here's what the quote means, and then you move on to another one, or you move on to some other bit of information, or you move on to a logical, conceptual argument for what you're saying. You have not, you haven't given the punchline to the reader. You haven't said, what does it have to do with my point? I have a point. It's this. I'm now giving you some detailed information, right? I need to draw the connection. You need to draw the connection between that information back to your main idea. And you don't do that by saying the same sentence over and over, right? Don't do that. Say specifically, what does this quote, how does this quote that I have just given you, or these quotes that I've just given you from eating animals and I've just discussed and explained what they mean. Now, what does it have to do with my main idea? How is it support? How does it serve to persuade and convince and make sense, make logical sense of my idea? You have to do this every single evidence paragraph. If you don't, your reader is a bit confused, right? Because again, remember, it's your idea. You know what you mean better than anyone else. So you need to explain yourself, right? And you need to explain in a much more gruelingly detailed way than you are used to. And then and then then it seems needed. In college writing, which is really scholarship, right? In scholarly writing, we do what some of you I know would think of as over explaining, right? But it's not actually over explaining, it's teaching. Teaching is often over explaining in the normal world, right? In the normal world of social interactions. But when we're teaching, and that is always what we're doing when we write an essay, think of yourself in writing this essay and every essay, think of yourself as a teacher. You're teaching. You have an idea and you're teaching it to a bunch of readers, and your hope is that you will have convinced and persuaded your reader, student, listener, viewer before the end, right? That's the content of the essay. I've just laid it out. Set it up at the beginning. Make it count. Make your case, right? You need, in a 3-page essay, you're going to have 4 or 5 body paragraphs, right? Make them good, make them count. Use the best stuff, right, that Jonathan Safran Foer has given us, or that Michael Pollan has given us, or that Amanda Gorman gives us in her beautiful poem. Okay? Use all the best stuff from your text and make your case. Okay? And then close it. Close the door, right? At the end of the essay, it's like you're saying the end, like at the end of a TV show, or if you think about like a movie, often when you go to the movies or you watch a movie on Netflix, you know when the movie is about to end, you can feel it. And that's because the filmmaker is giving us a conclusion, which we can't see, right? He or she is giving us a final 10 minutes, right? Which is their film version of a conclusion, which we don't realize exactly, but we feel it. Okay, that's what you're doing at the end. That's your final sort of hurrah paragraph at the end of your essay. That's really the content of the college essay. That's the map that I want you to learn in this class, that I want you to get mapped into your brains in this class, and that I want you to carry with you, right? What is rhetoric and how do we do it? Okay, and then we'll do it again for the midterm essay, and then we'll do it yet again in a longer essay for the final capstone essay in this class. Okay, so yeah, I think that's everything that I had to say about the content of the college essay. This video essay. This video got a lot longer than I meant. I'm going to stop now. So I look forward to reading your essays. I look forward to your first attempts in this class at rhetoric. And I'm going to shut this now, and then I will make the second video, which is the one on format, which won't be nearly as long. Okay. Bye-bye.